morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Global Atheist News Roundup, dateline 26th of August 2023. This week's headlines. Democracy becomes a distant dream as the Taliban bans political parties. What now for Mali, the country that bet its security on Wagner? An Israeli ex-school principal is jailed for sexually abusing Australian students. A girl, 13, gives birth after she was raped and denied abortion in Mississippi. The National Secular Society tells the Parliamentary Committee to remove bishops from the Lords. Anglican bishops lobby for exceptions to mandatory reporting laws. A UN resolution claims that damaging holy books violates international law. A new Oregon law says amputees can get their body parts back for spiritual reasons. The chief Rabbi of Ukraine blesses their war effort. And a Mapuka church service involves bottom waggling. The Taliban regime has banned all political parties citing Sharia law, a body of religious law that forms a part of the Islamic tradition. According to the extremist organization, the concept of political parties does not match the interests of people. While addressing a press conference on Wednesday, the Taliban's Ministry of Justice announced a complete ban on the activities of all political parties in the country, citing their misalignment with the interests of the people. Political parties do not have a Sharia basis, nor are they in the nation's interest, nor does the nation want it. Experience has shown that the current destruction of the country is due to the country's political parties, Abdul Hakim Shari, the acting Minister of Justice for the Taliban, stated in Kabul. The country had at least 73 registered political parties until the Taliban dethroned the democratically elected government and took over the charge of the already cash-strapped nation in August 2021. As Mali fights Islamist militants and separatists, it turned to Wagner mercenaries for security. But with the group's leader now presumed dead, UN peacekeepers are leaving and Mali faces a crisis. The BBC's Firas Kilani travelled to its dangerous northern desert region, the only international journalist to go there in the past year, to meet people caught up in the chaos. He says, "It was late in the evening when we set up camp, lit a fire to cook our dinner, and laid down our blankets to sleep under the open sky. Suddenly, the silence of the hot desert night was broken by the roar of a motorbike. Around us, we heard a series of clicks as the armed men in our convoy cocked their rifles and machine guns. We were with a group of Tuareg separatists who told the man on the motorbike to move on. As soon as he left, our hosts told us that we had to leave too, immediately. It was too risky to stay put, as the man was a scout for a local group linked to Al-Qaeda." An Israeli former head teacher will spend up to 15 years in jail for sexually assaulting 2 students at an ultra-Orthodox Jewish school in Australia. Malka Leifer raped and indecently assaulted sisters Dussie Ehrlich and Ellie Sapper between 2003 and 2007, a jury found in April. Leifer's sentencing ends a 15-year push for the mother of 8 to face justice. She had pleaded not guilty to more than 24 charges and spent years fighting extradition from Israel. But in 2021, an Israeli judge found that she had faked mental illness to avoid facing the courts and ordered that she be sent to Melbourne. During a lengthy trial, the jury heard evidence that Leifer had abused the sisters in locked classrooms, on school camps, and at the head teacher's own home. Detailing the 18 charges on Thursday, Judge Mark Gamble called her offending insidious. Leifer was a revered figure at the Adas Israel school, awed almost like a rabbi, he said, and the sisters were starved of love and in need of protection, emotionally and physically abused at home by their mother, and completely uneducated about sex. This case is striking for just how vulnerable these victims were, and for the calculating way in which the offender, Mrs. Leifer, took callous advantage for her own perverse sexual gratification, the judge said. Considering the time she has already served in prison, Leifer will be eligible for parole in June 2029. A 13-year-old girl in Mississippi gave birth to a boy after she was raped and impregnated by a stranger and then was unable to get an abortion. The mother of the girl, who uses the pseudonym Ashley in the report, was looking to get an abortion for her daughter, but was told the closest abortion provider was in Chicago, a drive of more than 9 hours from their home in Clarksdale, Mississippi. Ashley's mother, referred to as Regina in the report, told Time that the cost of getting an abortion in Chicago was too expensive when considering the price of travel, taking time off work, and getting the abortion for her daughter. "I don't have the funds for all this," Regina told Time. The report is the latest in a series of horrific personal accounts that have surfaced after the US Supreme Court overturned the nationwide abortion access rights which had been established by the Roe v. Wade precedent. Since the decision, titled Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, 14 states banning abortion have gone into effect, according to the Center for Reproductive Rights. 2 out of 3 sexual assault cases in the US are now not reported to the police, according to the Rape, Abuse and Incest National Network, an anti-sexual assault non-profit. If an exception is made, a person must travel out of their state to get an abortion procedure if their state bans it. Removing seats reserved for clergy is the obvious place to start any House of Lords reform, the National Secular Society told the UK Parliamentary Committee. Responding to a call for evidence from the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee, the NSS said the continued presence of bishops in the legislature is impossible to justify. The UK is the only Western democracy in which clerics hold seats in the legislature as of right, with Iran, a theocratic regime, being the only other country to do so. The NSS said the current system, under which 26 seats in the House of Lords are granted to Church of England bishops, shows institutional favouritism for one religion, that is, incompatible with a pluralistic nation that aspires to treat all citizens equally. Rejecting the government's statement that bishops see their role as speaking for those of all faiths, the NSS argued that such a claim is patronising and fails to explain why religious perspectives should be afforded special status. The bishops have frequently used their role in the upper chamber to block progressive legislation on issues such as same-sex marriage and assisted dying, as well as to secure exemptions and concessions in equality law. This lobbying often runs contrary to the views of the majority of the British public and even to Anglican congregations. As the 2021 census revealed, Christians now account for less than half of England and Wales's population, and less than 1% of the population of England now attend Anglican services on a typical Sunday. The British Social Attitude Surveys have also shown that most Britons do not belong to any religion, with minority faiths seeing significant growth in recent decades. An Anglican group has told the government laws mandating the report of child sexual abuse should not apply to religious confession. Responding to a Home Office consultation on the introduction of mandatory reporting laws, Forward in Faith, a conservative Anglican group which opposes the ordination of women, said that an exception should be included to make provision for the seal of the sacrament of confession. The response was signed by 8 Church of England bishops, including the bishops of Wakefield, Blackburn and Chichester. The latter, Martin Warner, holds one of the 26 seats reserved for Church of England clergy in the House of Lords. Under the proposals announced by the government earlier this year, people who work with children in England would be obliged to report suspicions of abuse to authorities. Those who failed to do so would risk being prosecuted. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, which published its final report last year, recommended the introduction of such measures, specifying that they should not be subject to religious exceptions and that abuse must be reported even if it is revealed during sacramental confession. In its response, Forward in Faith said that obliging priests to breach the confidentiality of confession by requiring them to report abuse would compromise religious freedom. The law already requires that admission of terrorism or money laundering during confession must be reported. Forward in Faith also said that removing the absolute confidentiality of confession would harm survivors of abuse, adding that it was an incredibly remote contingency and unproven concern that perpetrators of abuse would abuse the seal of confession. However, research by Irish academic Dr. Marie Keenan suggests that confession has been used by clerical sex offenders as a site of respite from guilt and may enable abuse to continue. Richard Scorer, head of abuse law at Slater and Gordon, has also said there is ample evidence that many disclosures of child sex abuse are made in confession which, if they had been acted on, could have prevented subsequent abuse. The NSS asked Lambeth Palace whether the Church of England supported the stance of the 8 bishops. No response had been received at the time of publication. A UN resolution has falsely claimed acts of violence against religious texts are in violation of international law. The resolution, entitled promoting interreligious and intercultural dialogue and tolerance in countering hate speech, was published by the UN General Assembly this month. The UK Ambassador of the General Assembly, Richard Croker, said the UK reluctantly joined the consensus on the resolution, adding that he remained concerned by language which could suggest limitations on freedom of expression beyond what is well established in international human rights law. The UK had attempted to introduce more balanced language, but its efforts were rebuffed, he said. The resolution also stressed the importance of working towards an internationally agreed definition of hate speech that can help in countering it. Croker said it was not necessary to agree a new definition of hate speech, which may undermine the existing finely balanced position in international human rights law. Existing law already provides a clear framework, he said. The UK has disassociated itself from these two components of the resolution. Health care facilities in Oregon will be allowed to return amputated body parts to patients for cultural, spiritual, or religious reasons under a new law supported by tribes, Oregon Public Broadcasting reported. The bill, which takes effect on September the 24th, was spearheaded by St. Charles Health System and leaders of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. For some members of the tribes, keeping a person's body together is necessary for a smooth transition to the spirit world. In our spirituality, one of our sayings is "one body, one mind," said Wilson Weaver, Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs spiritual leader and oral historian. When there's amputation, most of our tribal members know that we need to be whole at the time of our leaving this world to the next. The chief rabbi of Ukraine blesses their war effort. See this video.
Dear friends, regards from Kiev, Ukraine. Today, this Shabbat, we'll learn in Torah the chapter's name, Kitet Sela Milchama, when you go to the war against the enemy, and God will give him to your hands, and you will take him to captivity. It's written exactly in Torah, Alo Evecha, no against the enemy, and above your enemy. Torah teaches us that when you go to the war, you have to be clear spiritual. That's as was soldiers of the King David army. They was tzaddikim, was clear man, and that's why now Ukraine struggle against the enemy, but the Ukraine have a very spiritual now, and they fight for their families, for their independence, for their lives. That's why Ukrainian people they have a high morally. That's why they will win. I'm not in Kiev, and I bless them, and I bless that Ukraine will win, and will build a good, beautiful country. And I would like to bless all of you, all our friends all over the world that stand with Ukraine, that help Ukraine, and God will bless all of you. And Mashiach come, Messiah will come, and will stop all wars, and we'll live peacefully.
And a service in Mapouka includes a strange dance. See this video. Stay on this channel to watch Tercia and I interview Josh Dohe, a former atheist who found Jesus when he was in hospital. You can join in and ask him questions. It's a live show. And don't forget to watch Views on the News, the show where our opinionated panel give their views on the news I've just reported on. This has been Global Atheist News. Please like, subscribe and share. Thank you for watching.